Hey there, friend. Welcome back to another journey into the comfortably tedious side of history. Tonight, I'm about to whisk you away from your soft, warm bed and your perfectly fluffy pillow, dropping you straight into a reality so uncomfortable. You'll never complain about slow Wi-Fi or lukewarm coffee again. So before we dive headlong into the muck and misery of medieval peasanthood, go ahead, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy these oddly relaxing historical nightmares. And why not tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what the time is there? It always fascinates me to know who I'm keeping company as we drift into the past. Now, dim the lights, pull your blanket closer, and maybe even start up a fan for that gentle, reassuring hum. Because tonight, my dear friend, you're waking up in medieval Europe, year 1325 to be exact. Good morning. Or rather, not so good morning. Congratulations on surviving the night. That's already a minor miracle. You open your eyes and immediately realize that everything hurts. You're lying not on a mattress, but on a lumpy pile of hay. And as you shift slightly, you discover that the hay is not alone. Something is wriggling beneath you. Probably rodents, maybe insects, almost certainly fleas. They're already feasting upon your ankles with gleeful enthusiasm. Welcome to your morning alarm system, a symphony of bites and itches. As you sit up, shivering, you glance around your luxurious accommodations. Your homia charming medieval hooties, the very definition of open concept living. And by open concept, I mean there's only one room, no windows, and just a hole in the wall where wind whistles through cheerfully, laughing at your misery. Your family is all here with you, parents, siblings, grandparents, and even that distant cousin who showed up one summer and conveniently forgot to leave. Personal space, privacy, a place to quietly contemplate life, forget about it. Your entire world fits snugly into this single crowded space, family, livestock, and domestic insects included. You take a deep breath, immediately regretting that decision. Yes, the unique aroma of medieval morning human sweat, goat, smoke from yesterday's fire, and a strong whiff of something suspiciously moldy. Air fresheners won't be invented for another few centuries, and even if they were, they'd simply melt or burst into flames out of sheer hopelessness. You stretch tentatively, each joint crackling like a sad campfire, because at the ripe old age of 22, you're essentially middle-aged by medieval standards. Congratulations again, aging is accelerated here, as is suffering. Your back feels like someone slept on it, and your knees sound like a peasant shaking a bag full of rocks. But what's the alternative? Lying back down? No thanks. The longer you stay horizontal, the more your friendly local parasites feast upon you. You finally gather enough courage to rise from your haystack of despair. Stepping onto the dirt floor is like playing medieval roulette. Will it be dry, crusty soil? Or wet mud, generously soaked by last night's rain leaking through your quaintly unreliable thatched roof? Or perhaps it's something your neighbor's chicken lovingly left for you overnight. Either way, you're barefoot. Shoes? Who do you think you are, the local baron? There's no escape from the relentless cold seeping through every crack and crevice. Your clothing rough wool, lovingly crafted to be as itchy as physically possible, damp from days of rain and sweat. There's no fresh laundry scent here, just the authentic aroma of medieval realism, a damp sheep combined with 3 months of unwashed humanity. As you try to rub life back into your frozen fingers, you glance over to see your family slowly rising from their own respective misery piles. Their expressions mirror yours, resignation mingled with mild disbelief that they've survived another night. You exchange nods with your siblings. Words aren't necessary. Misery speaks a universal language. Speaking of language, You realize nature has begun to call urgently, very urgently. But this is the Middle Ages, and the modern miracle known as the toilet is just a distant dream. Here, your bathroom is a wooden bucket behind the hut already overflowing because Uncle Wolfstan made the terrible decision to eat turnips past their prime. You steel your nerves, step outside into the frosty morning air, and pray your aim is true because privacy, sanitation, and dignity are simply out of the question. And here's a delightful historical tidbit. After finishing your business, you toss the bucket's contents directly into the street. You're expected to shout a polite warning, something like, "Gardaloo." But frankly, no one ever moves fast enough. Medieval streets were notoriously unpleasant open sewers flowing freely with the waste of humans, animals, and whatever else might be decomposing in the mud. If you're lucky, you'll avoid slipping into your neighbor's leftovers today. If not, well, chalk it up to character building. Back inside your charmingly frigid hut, you face breakfast, the culinary equivalent of defeat. Your meal is pottage, a thick, gloopy stew that's been simmering suspiciously for days, perhaps even weeks. Today's special includes root vegetables, grains, and something that looks alarmingly similar to yesterday's leftovers. But hey, it's hot, it's edible, mostly, and that's about as luxurious as life gets here. You wash it down with weak, warm ale because the water, of course, is teeming with parasites. So yes, even your morning beverage is a gamble against dysentery. By now, dear viewer, you're probably longing for your cozy, modern comforts, indoor plumbing, microwaves, and clothing free from infestations. Maybe tonight you're even more grateful for your pillow and mattress than ever before. But here's the thing. People live this reality every single day. There were no breaks, no shortcuts, and no escape from the relentless grind of survival, but they endured. And somehow, through all the fleas, mud, and suspicious stew, they even found moments to laugh, love, and dream of better days. Tonight, as we continue this journey into medieval life, keep in mind that history is never quite what Hollywood makes it out to be. Knights and castles, kings and queenshire, they're exciting. But the heart of history is here, in the daily lives of ordinary people like you and me, who endured incredible hardships with resilience and humor. Now, settle deeper into your comfortable bed, safe in your warm blankets, and grateful for your insect-free existence. Let your mind drift deeper into the peculiar comfort of knowing just how far humanity has come. Are you cozy now? Excellent, because this, my dear friend, is just the beginning. Relax, breathe deeply, and let your worries fade as we continue tonight's fascinatingly boring journey through medieval history. You open your eyes to darkness. Not the cozy, dreamy kind of darkness that hugs you under a warm blanket, but the suffocating, chilly kind that clings to your breath and reminds you, this isn't your bed, and this definitely isn't your century. Welcome to a medieval morning. The first thing you notice is that you're freezing, not crack, a window for fresh air, cold, not guess, I should, turn up, the thermostat, cold. No. This is a deeper, more intimate chill. The kind that has spent the night crawling into your bones and unpacking a suitcase. Your breath fogs in the air like a miniature storm cloud, and your nose, if it hasn't already frozen off, feels suspiciously brittle. Your bed, such as it is, consists of a few armfuls of hay stuffed into a lumpy cloth sack. If you're lucky, you have a wool blanket, scratchier than a goat's beard, and smelling suspiciously like its original owner. The hay crackles as you shift, and not in a charming, rustic way, more in a something just moved under me way. Is it a flea, a mouse, a beetle with aspirations? Best not to investigate. In medieval Europe, curiosity doesn't kill the cat, it kills you. You attempt to stretch, but your joints have entered a contract with the climate, and are refusing all movement without protest. Your back creaks like a ship at sea. Your knees feel like they've been tenderized with a mallet. You're 22 years old and your body already thinks it's 80. The floor beneath you is dirt, not a metaphorical dirty floor, actual dirt, the kind people today use for gardening, except this garden doesn't grow flowers. It grows fungus, rot, and regret. You slide your feet to the edge of your makeshift bed and lower them cautiously, like a soldier entering a battlefield. Are you stepping into wet mud from last night's rain? Or perhaps into something more organic left behind by one of the chickens that shares your home? Either way, your bare feet are about to find out. And yes, you're barefoot. Shoes are expensive. You had a pair once. They died valiantly last winter in a tragic encounter with a frozen manure pile. The air smells of boiled turnips, unwashed humanity, and damp wool. You'd think after a lifetime of inhaling it, your nose would have just given up. But no, every morning, it greets you like a slap with a wet rag soaked in goat breath. The fire burned out hours ago, leaving behind a faint trail of smoke and a collection of coughing coals warm enough to tease, but useless for actual warmth. Around you, the rest of the household begins to stir, and by household, I mean your extended family and a rotating cast of animals. You're not alone in this one-room wooden hut. There's your mother, your father, 2 brothers, your sister, a grandmother who's mostly blind and entirely unimpressed by modern hygiene standards, and your uncle who lost his mind during the famine of 18 but still insists on sleeping beside the chickens. And yes, there are chickens, also a goat, and possibly a pig, though no one's seen it since last week, and there's a suspiciously greasy patch in the corner. There are no walls separating you, no curtains, no doors, just one communal living space for sleeping, eating, cooking, and just relieving yourself into a shared chamber pot during the night. That pot is now full, overflowing in fact, which means someone will have to take it outside. That someone is probably you. The room is alive with sound. Someone's snoring, someone's coughing, someone's whispering a morning prayer that sounds more like a complaint. The goat farts quietly in the corner. Your younger brother begins scratching his scalp with the intensity of someone digging for treasure. Lice are practically a family heirloom. You sit up, brush the hay off your tunic, and begin your morning ritual, trying to find your dignity in a pile of lice, infested wool, and bad decisions. Your only tunic hangs from a nail by the fire, still damp, slightly moldy, and so stiff with grime it could walk on its own. You pull it over your head and brace for impact. It's cold, itchy, and smells like it's been marinated in turnip stew and fear. Next come your trousers, which are not so much pants as they are 2 fabric tubes loosely stitched together with twine and optimism. There's no underwear, just the breeze. A bold, disrespectful breeze. And yet, this is normal. You move toward the doorway, no door. Just a hanging cloth hand step into the world. Outside, the morning fog clings to the air like a ghost that never got the memo to move on. The ground is soft and damp. Your feet sink slightly, and somewhere nearby a rooster screams like it has a personal vendetta against your ears. You head to the back of the hut to empty the chamber pot, holding it at arm's length like a bomb. This is where the smell reaches full crescendo. The mix of human waste, spoiled vegetables, rainwater, and something you pray isn't decomposing under the compost heap hits you like a medieval uppercut. You tip the pot over, and with it goes your last shred of self-respect. You don't even bother yelling, "Gardaloo." Anymore, there's no one in the path, and even if there were, they'd likely thank you for the warm splash. The path outside is slick with mud and animal droppings. Chickens peck at it anyway, blissfully unaware of their place in the universe. A neighbor trudges past, wearing a cloak so full of holes it looks like it was attacked by moths with a grudge. You nod at each other in silence. Conversation this early is considered aggressive. Back inside, someone's tending to the fire, coaxing it back to life with damp sticks and curses. Your mother is already stirring a pot of something that smells like boiled resignation. It's breakfast, which we'll discuss in detail soon, but know this. If you were hoping for bacon, eggs, or anything with a crunch that didn't come from weevils, prepare to be disappointed. Your sister is attempting to brush her hair with what appears to be a chicken bone. Your father is pulling on his boot-scracked leather held together with twine and prayers. They'll probably disintegrate by lunchtime. The baby, swaddled in cloth that looks suspiciously like an old grain sack, is screaming not in hunger, just existential dread. And through it all, you keep moving, because that's what people did in the Middle Ages. You didn't have a choice. You woke up sore, cold, itchy, hungry, and annoyed, and then you got on with your day. You were expected to. There were no mental health days, no PTO, no calling in sick because you just didn't feel like peasanting today. Your feelings were irrelevant. Your comfort was a luxury reserved for the dead. And yet, people endured. Not because they enjoyed it, not because they were tougher than us, though, let's be honest, they kind of were, but because survival was the only option. And somehow, in the midst of the wet hay, the shared chamber pots, and the unrelenting cold, they found a way to laugh, to love, to go on. So the next time your alarm clock rings a little too early, or your coffee machine breaks down, or you step in something weird on your kitchen floor, just remember, at least you didn't wake up in 1325 with a chicken nesting on your foot and a rat chewing on your only blanket. This was morning in medieval Europe. Grim, cold, loud, cramped, and gloriously uncomfortable. Now that you've survived the start of your day, it's time to face the next horror, breakfast. Don't worry, it gets worse from here. Let's talk about something delicate. Not delicate as in fragile, but delicate as in nobody wants to think about it right before bed. But here we are anyway, medieval hygiene. Or, more accurately, the complete and catastrophic absence of it. Now, imagine waking up with a very modern problem. The urgent need to go, but there's no bathroom, no toilet, no sink, no door, no seat. What you do have is a wooden bucket in the corner, shared with everyone else in the hut. That includes your parents, your siblings, your grandmother, 2 goats, and 3 chickens, some of which may or may not be dead. Privacy isn't just a luxury, it's not even a concept. This bucket, known by the charming name of a chamber pot, is what separates you from the streets, but only briefly, because once it's full and it's always full, it needs to be emptied. Where does it go, you ask? Right into the middle of the path behind your home. If you're polite, you yell "Gardaloo" to warn passers-by before tossing the contents out the window. If not, well, medieval surprises are just part of the day. In cities, things are no better. In fact, they're much worse. People live packed into cramped streets, houses leaning over one another, floors sagging under the weight of damp wood and worse smells. There are open sewers, drainage ditches clogged with waste, and entire neighborhoods that smell like a mix between spoiled cabbage and regret. You can't avoid it. It's in the air, in the mud, and on your shoes, assuming you even own shoes. The idea of sanitation, as we know it, simply doesn't exist. There's no plumbing, no running water. You haul your drinking and cooking water from a stream or a well, but that same stream is where animals defecate, villagers wash clothes, and the local tanner dumps his waste. The water is cloudy. Sometimes it smells, but it's what you have. If it looks clear, That's considered a bonus, not a guarantee. And bathing? Oh no. Bathing is a whole saga. To start, most people believe washing too often is dangerous. Water, they think, opens the pores, and once the pores are open, disease can sneak in. So, washing regularly is seen not as a mark of health, but as a fast track to illness. And even if you wanted to bathe, how exactly would you do it? You'd need to collect buckets of water from the stream, heat it over a fire, carry it inside without spilling it, pour it into a wooden tub that leaks, and then bathe in water that's shared with the rest of your family, including the chickens. And by the time it's your turn, the water's cold and gray and full of mysterious floaters, so most people just skip the whole thing. Soap exists, sort of. It's made from lye and animal fat. It burns your skin if it's too strong and smells like smoked goat. If you do own a bar of it, you save it for something special like cleaning wounds or preparing for your wedding. Otherwise, you might splash some water on your face and call it a day. Your hair is never clean. It's rarely cut, and it's alive, not metaphorically, literally. Lice, fleas, and nits are constant companions. You scratch until you bleed. Combs are passed around like heirlooms. If you have a hat, you keep it on not for fashion, but to avoid watching something crawl out of your scalp during church. And yes, everyone stinks. You do. Your neighbors do. The priest smells like incense and disappointment. Even the animals wince when you walk past. But the best part? You don't even notice anymore. Because after a while, your nose just gives up. Now, in towns, there are public bathhouses, or there were, communal places where men and women separately, if the town's moral fabric is still somewhat intact, could soak, scrub, and sweat. They were steamy, social, and not always squeaky clean. Eventually, the church grows suspicious. Too much nakedness, too much mingling, not enough guilt, so the bathhouses are shut down. God doesn't like steam, apparently. So what do you drink if water is suspicious and bathing is scandalous? Beer. You drink beer. Weak, cloudy, flat beer. It's called small ale, and everyone drinks it. Children, pregnant women, the elderly, because it's safer than the water. The alcohol content is low, but the water used to brew it has been boiled, killing most of the nasty things that would otherwise try to kill you. Even breakfast comes with ale. You pour it into your wooden cup, dip your stale bread in it, and pray it goes down smooth. And this isn't the good beer. This is homebrewed, bitter, and often smells like barley left too long in the sun. But it keeps you hydrated, and more importantly, it doesn't give you diarrhea. Let's talk a little more about disease, because the connection between hygiene and illness hasn't been discovered yet. Germ theory won't come around for centuries. Instead, people think sickness comes from bad air miasma. So if someone falls ill, you might wave herbs under their nose, or burn incense, or carry a pomander filled with spices. That'll fix it, surely. Washing hands? Unheard of. Bleeding them with a knife? Absolutely. Doctors, if you can afford, one might advise you to avoid bathing altogether. Priests might tell you it's a punishment for your sins. And barbers should double, as surgeons might just cut you open and hope for the best. None of these people are helpful. Most are dangerous. But what choice do you have? And let's not forget the worst offender, the outhouse. If your village has one, it's a hole in the ground with a wooden plank across it. It stinks in winter, steams in summer, and always attracts flies, sometimes rats, sometimes both. If the pit fills up, they just dig another one, or not. If someone falls in, it becomes a cautionary tale for the kids. As the day ends, you wash your hands with the same water you use to boil cabbage, if you wash them at all. You scratch your arms raw, your scalp bleeds slightly, and your teeth, if you still have any, feel furry. Toothbrushes don't exist. Toothpaste is a mix of ashes and salt, if anything. And dental care? The local blacksmith has pliers. That's about it. At night, you lie down in the same clothes you wore all day, still damp from sweat and mud. You haven't bathed. You haven't even changed. The lice in your tunic are having a banquet. The fleas on your ankles are starting a family. You scratch. You sigh. You sleep. This is hygiene in the Middle Ages. It's not clean, it's not comfortable, and it's definitely not safe, but it's daily life, and somehow people manage to survive. Not many, not long, but enough. So tonight, when you stand in your bathroom bright, warm, spotless, brushing your teeth with minty foam and washing your hands with scented soap from a dispenser that pumps on command, remember this. You live in the future. You live in a world where cleanliness isn't just a virtue, it's a miracle. Your bathroom is a spa compared to a baron's estate. And your shower? It's witchcraft to a peasant. Be grateful. And maybe, just maybe, take an extra long shower tomorrow morning for all the ancestors who never got one. Now, on to breakfast. Let's say you've made it through the night. You survived the lice, the fleas, the cold, and the chamber pot experience. You're sore, tired, and slightly violated by your own tunic but still alive. Now it's morning, and your stomach growls. Surely now comes the comfort of a hearty breakfast, right? Not exactly. Breakfast in the Middle Ages isn't a joy. It's not a morning ritual. It's damage control. If you're a peasant and your morning meal is whatever hasn't spoiled, frozen, molded, or walked off during the night, the concept of variety doesn't exist. You don't wake up and think, what do I feel like today? You wake up and think, is that still edible? And even that's optimistic. So what's on the menu? One word, pottage. Yes, it's back. That gray, gloopy stew you had last night, you're having it again, because it's been sitting on the fire or near the fire simmering all night, or rather, fermenting. You just add water, maybe a turnip, stir vigorously, and hope it doesn't bubble in a way that suggests it's alive. Pottage isn't bad, the first time, but this is day 6 of the same batch. It tastes like the inside of a boot and smells like boiled socks. Still, it's warm, and in winter, warm wins. You slurp slowly, ignoring the occasional crunch-wahs that a grain, a pebble, something worse, doesn't matter. Hunger always overrides judgment. Next to the pottage, you get bread, or more accurately, a dark, rock-hard block of sadness that calls itself bread. It's made from rye or barley, never wheat. That's for the rich and bulked out with whatever's available. Sawdust, old beans, ground acorns, sometimes even dried weeds, anything to stretch the flour. This bread doesn't crumble, it cracks. You need a knife to cut it and a chisel to chew it. The crust could stop a sword. The inside could bruise a tooth. But again, you're hungry. And the only condiment available is desperation. There's no butter. That's for people who own cows, or who know people who own cows. No jam, either. Sugar costs more than you'll earn in a year. Honey is possible, if you like being stung while climbing trees, so it's just dry bread. Maybe dipped in your pottage if you want to soften it up and blur the misery. If you're lucky, and by lucky, I mean truly divinely blessed, you might have an onion or two left over from storage. You peel it with numb fingers, take a bite, and cry for 2 reasons. 1, because it burns, and 2, because it's the most flavor you've had since the last Holy Day feast, which was in September. What about drinks? Water is still trying to kill you, so you reach for the only safe option. Small ale, flat, yeasty, barely, alcoholic beer. It tastes like wet bread and old hay. But it's safer than water and warmer than air. You drink it from a wooden cup, cloudy with use, and try not to think about the last time it was cleaned. You drink slowly or fast. It doesn't matter. It won't get you drunk. It just gets you through. Dairy? Almost non-existent. Milk spoils fast unless you're making cheese and you're not. The one goat you share with your cousin stopped giving milk last month. Maybe she's pregnant. Maybe she's just tired of your nonsense. Either way, your porridge is dairy-free and joy-free. Now you might be wondering, what about eggs? And the answer is, maybe if you find them. Chickens lay where they want under hay piles, behind firewood stacks, sometimes in the neighbor's barn. If you do find an egg, it might already have started turning into a chicken, and then you have a dilemma: breakfast or potential future breakfast. Meat? Forget it. You don't eat meat for breakfast. You don't eat meat, period, unless you're celebrating a wedding, a major holiday, or a very suspicious accident involving your neighbor's pig. Even then, it's boiled, salted, or smoked so hard it tastes like leather and regret. Fruit? Only in season. Maybe an apple, if it hasn't gone soft or been claimed by worms. You cut off the bad parts and try not to think about what you missed. Strawberries, cherries, grapes, lovely words, mostly imaginary. Vegetables in the morning? Only if there's cabbage left from yesterday, or a turnip, or a beet, and they've all been boiled into pottage anyway, so it's hard to tell them apart. So there you sit, chewing dense bread, sipping sad ale, and staring into the bubbling beige despair that is your breakfast stew. You don't talk. Not because it's rude, but because everyone's chewing, or trying not to gag, or trying to remember a time when food had color. There's no fire crackling in the hearth, no sunlight streaming in, just smoke from the damp wood, steam from the pottage, and silence broken only by slurps, coughs, and the occasional sneeze from someone who definitely has something contagious. Children get the same food, maybe less. They chew slowly. Some of them are too young to understand how bleak this is. Others are too tired to care. A toddler tries to drop bread in the fire. No one stops him. You understand. And this is a good day, because there is food. In lean times, breakfast might be just bread, or just broth, or just nothing. There are days when you drink hot water to feel full. Days when you chew on bark, or boil tree roots, or grind bones into powder to mix into soup. You stretch meals as far as they'll go. You hope, you pray, you ration until there's nothing left to ration. There's no such thing as brunch, no leisurely late morning meals, no eggs Benedict, no pancakes, no hot coffee with foam in the shape of a fern. You don't get options. You get what's available, and then you go to work. No one lingers over breakfast. The firewood needs chopping. The animals need feeding. The fields need plowing. And so, you wipe your hands on your already dirty tunic, stand up with a creaking spine, and prepare to face the cold, hard day ahead, powered only by lukewarm ale and a cube of misery bread. But you don't complain, because complaining uses energy, and energy is precious. You save your breath for later, when you're cursing the mud in the fields or the ache in your knees. Breakfast doesn't make you feel good, it just keeps you from collapsing, barely. And yet, somehow, there's a strange dignity to it all. To eating what you have, to making it stretch, to sharing scraps with your children, to swallowing spoonfuls of blandness and calling it nourishment. You're not eating for taste. You're eating for survival, and survival in this world is victory enough. So the next time you sit in front of a stack of pancakes, or a bagel with cream cheese, or a bowl of cereal with fresh berries and cold milk, take a moment. Think of your medieval ancestors chewing turnip pottage by the dim glow of a smoldering log, and thank them. Because they didn't eat to enjoy, they ate to endure. And they did. Now that you've eaten your medieval breakfast, if we can call it, that it's time to get dressed. But don't get excited. There's no closet, no choices, no seasonal wardrobe rotation. What you wear today is what you wore yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that. You reach for your one outfit, and I do mean one. Most medieval peasants owned a single set of clothes, maybe two if they were lucky or unusually ambitious with spinning and sewing. This outfit doesn't hang in a wardrobe, it hangs from a nail on the wall, a bit damp, a bit stiff, and still warm from the goat who was napping on it all night. Your tunic is made of wool, not the cozy, soft kind that hugs your skin in modern sweaters, but the scratchy, rough, unfiltered kind that feels like wearing a doormat soaked in sheep sweat. It's thick in all the wrong ways, too hot in summer, too thin in winter, and always just wet enough to feel like it's never quite dry. You pull it over your head, wincing as it scratches down your neck and back. There are stains. You don't remember when they appeared. You don't ask questions. One sleeve is longer than the other. The neckline is more ripped by accident than designed by intention. And the whole thing smells like a combination of body odor, smoke, and mildew. Because that's exactly what it is. Next, trousers. Maybe linen, maybe more wool. You've had them for years. They were handed down by someone taller and skinnier, which explains the fit. Too tight in the thighs, too loose in the waist, too short for decency. There's a patch where the seat gave out last harvest and was repaired hastily with twine. It's holding for now, you hope. Underwear? That's optimistic. A linen loincloth if you're fancy. Otherwise, nothing. Just a cool breeze and a sense of exposure. Socks? Not a thing. Not unless you wrap strips of fabric around your feet like primitive bandages. And even then, they soak up every bit of mud, sweat, and pig droppings between your front door and the field. Shoes. Let's talk about shoes. You might own a pair, made of rawhide or leather. No soles, no arch support, no laces. Just stiff, crude slippers that barely survive the week, let alone the year. They're soaked half the time, frozen solid the other half, and falling apart always. You walk anyway, or you go barefoot. That's normal too. Imagine going barefoot across frost-covered fields, through muddy roads, over splinters, thorns, and the occasional forgotten horseshoe nail. Imagine doing it daily. And imagine not complaining, because everyone else is doing it too. And once you're dressed, if we can call this assemblage of damp wool and ragged seams, dressed, you don't change again. There's no work clothes versus home clothes. There's just these clothes, worn to the field, the dinner table, the church, and eventually to your grave. Laundry? Well, sort of. Washing clothes is a monumental task. You need to haul buckets of water, heat them over a fire, add ashes or lye soap if you even have it, and then scrub the garments until your knuckles bleed. Afterward, you rinse them in a stream that's downstream from a tannery and hope the current is strong enough to carry away the evidence of last month's stew. So most people don't wash their clothes often. Instead, they air them out, they shake them off, they beat them with sticks. Occasionally, they soak them in urine. That's not a joke. Stale urine is used as a detergent. You hang your tunic in a bucket of pee and let it freshen overnight. Then you put it back on. The smell? You stop noticing after a while. Or rather, you learn to notice other people's clothes instead. And if everyone stinks the same, what's the problem? Now, let's talk accessories. Belts are useful. They hold up your trousers and occasionally carry tools. They're usually leather, sometimes rope, sometimes string pulled from a frayed garment. Buttons aren't common yet, so clothes are tied shut with loops or laces, if they're shut at all. Head coverings are practical. A hood or cap keeps the rain off, the sun out, and the lice in. Women often wear wimples or veils white cloths pinned or tied around the head and chin. Not for fashion, but for modesty and warmth. And also, again, lice. Jewelry, maybe a wooden cross or a lucky charm, but more often you carry tool knife, spoon, or maybe a piece of flint tied to your belt. Useful things. Decorative things are for nobility. You dress for function, not flair. But even nobles aren't exempt from discomfort. Their fabrics are finer silk, velvet, linen, but their hygiene is just as suspect. And their fashions are worse. Tight shoes that deform the feet, enormous sleeves that dip into soup, headpieces so tall they require scaffolding. Back in your hut, you look around. Your children are getting dressed too if they didn't sleep in their clothes, which they probably did. You help tie a belt, lace a tunic, tug a stocking tight. The baby just wears a shirt. That's it. It'll do. By the time you're fully clothed, you're already sweating. The fire in the hearth is smoky, the hut is stuffy, and the wool traps heat like a sponge. But you can't strip. There's nowhere private to do it, and it's too cold anyway. You stay uncomfortable. That's just life. You scratch your scalp absent-mindedly. It's always itchy. The lice are active again. You'll need to comb through your hair later with a fine-toothed bone comb and hope the eggs haven't spread. They have, of course. They always do. And when the workday ends and your hands are blistered, your back is bent, and your legs are covered in mud, you don't take off your clothes. You sleep in them. Under a shared blanket, on a straw mattress that smells like mold and damp feet. The next morning, you'll do it all over again. Same tunic, same trousers, same cold shoes, same scent of old wool and low expectations. And somehow, it works. You don't freeze. You don't go naked. You survive. The clothes don't comfort, but they cover. And in the Middle Ages, that's good enough. So tonight, when you slip into your soft pajamas, step into your fleece robe, or pull on clean socks, spare a thought for your medieval ancestor. The one pulling a damp tunic over their lice-bitten shoulders, stepping barefoot into the mud, and braving another day in the itchiest century in history. Warm, dry, and clean is a modern miracle. Enjoy it. You've earned it just by being born late. Let's say you get sick, not life-threatening, just wrong. A cough that won't quit, a rash that keeps spreading, a sore tooth that pulses like it's hosting a demon. Today, you'd call a doctor, maybe check Google, maybe drink orange juice and cancel plans. In the Middle Ages, you pray, and then you bleed. Medical care in 1325 isn't what we'd call a science. It's more like organized guesswork with sharp objects. Everything starts with the four humorsa theory passed down from ancient Greece, baked into medieval medical textbooks like gospel. Your body, they say, is made of four fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. If you're unwell, it means these humors are out of balance. What causes the imbalance? No one knows. Maybe sin, maybe cold wind, maybe you look too long at a frog. Whatever the reason, the solution is almost always the same. Remove something. Blood is the favorite target. Got a headache? Too much blood in the head. Fever? Blood. Swollen foot? You guessed it, blood again. That's where bloodletting comes in. You lie down, maybe on a table, maybe on a bench, maybe on the floor. The local medical practitioner arrives. He's not necessarily trained. He's not necessarily sober. But he does own a knife, and that's qualification enough. He ties off your arm, slices open a vein, and lets it flow into a bowl. You get dizzy. He says that's a good sign. If you faint, even better. That means it's working. If you die, well, your humors were clearly beyond saving. If you're fancy, You might skip the knife and go for leeches. Yes, actual blood-sucking worms pulled from nearby ponds. The healer places them on your skin, often near your face or underarms, and lets them drink. You sit there as tiny mouths latch on and swell with your blood. It's horrifying, it's unsanitary, and for some reason, it's wildly popular. But bloodletting is just the beginning. Let's say you have stomach pain, maybe food poisoning, maybe parasites, maybe just last night's cabbage making a second appearance. The local solution? A purgative. A potion designed to make you vomit, or worse, purge everything from both ends. It could be wine mixed with ash, or crushed herbs in vinegar, or something more creative, like boiled metal shavings. Feel better? No? Well, time for a laxative. The medieval approach is simple. If something's wrong, force it out. By any hole available. If all else fails, there's always prayer. Spiritual illness is a serious concern. The soul and the body are deeply connected. If you're sick, the priest might be your first visitor, not the last. He'll perform last rites. He might hear your confession. He might sprinkle holy water or place relics on your chest. He will not wash his hands. If you're lucky, you'll recover. If not, it's said to be God's will, which is a polite way of saying we have no idea what we're doing. Now, let's say you've broken a bone. Maybe you slipped while carrying a bucket. Maybe a cart ran over your foot. Maybe you were just living and gravity got ambitious. There's no hospital, no x-rays, no anesthesia. Just some neighbors, a strong man to hold you down, and someone with a decent sense of what bone goes where. They'll tug, twist, and realign your limb while you scream into a bundle of hay. Then they wrap it with cloth, tie it with sticks, and hope the bone heals in something close to its original shape. If it doesn't, you limp forever. Or they cut it off. Yes, amputation is on the table. And when it is, the tools are usually blunt, rusty, and reused. You get no anesthetic, just a wooden stick to bite and some strong hands to pin you down. The leg is removed with a saw. The wound is cauterized with hot iron. The pain is biblical. Recovery is unlikely. Infection is almost certain. And speaking of infection, no one understands germs. No one sterilizes anything. Wounds are wrapped in dirty cloth. Tools are wiped on aprons. Hands go straight from the latrine to your incision. If the wound turns black, they say you've been cursed, or possessed, or both. Dental care, that's somehow worse. Toothaches are considered a punishment for sin. The treatment is to yank the tooth out with pliers, tongs, or the nearest blacksmith. There are no numbing agents, no antiseptics, no mercy. You just sit there, scream, and hope the infection doesn't reach your brain. Mental illness? It's not discussed. If you're anxious, melancholic, or hear voices, you're not unwell, you're sinful, or possessed. The priest may bless you, or beat you, or lock you in a monastery and let you waste away behind stone walls. There is no therapy, no talking, only silence and shame. Now let's talk about plague. When it arrives, and it always does, it kills fast. Within days, your lymph nodes swell, your body burns, and your skin turns black. You vomit blood. You smell like death. You become death. Your family flees. Your priest gives you last rites from a distance, and when you die, you're buried in a mass grave. No marker, no name, just one more body in a pit of thousands. No one knows what causes it. They blame bad air, or bad morals, or foreign traders, or cats. Yes, they kill the cats, which causes the rats to thrive, which causes the fleas to spread, which causes more plague. Brilliant. And yet, people keep trying. There are healers, midwives, herbalists, wise women. They use plants, roots, and poultices. Some of it works, most of it doesn't. But they care, they try. And for that, they're often accused of witchcraft. If you help too many people survive, you're suspicious. If you know too many plants by name, you're a threat. If a priest gets jealous of your skills, you might be put on trial. And if you're found guilty, which you usually are, you'll be tied to a stake and burned alive. A fair reward for trying to save lives. So you learn to suffer quietly. And yet, somehow, people endure. They survive childbirth without medicine. They recover from infections with no antibiotics. They live into their 30s, even 40s, with teeth like broken pottery and knees made of splinters. Because underneath all the leeches and bleeding and fire-cauterized wounds is community, family, ritual, care. It's not modern medicine. It's not even medieval medicine, really. It's survival medicine. And somehow, it's just enough. So tonight, when you take your vitamins and set your appointment with a licensed doctor who trained for a decade, remember the people who came before. The ones who bit sticks during amputations. Who drank beer instead of water. Who let worms crawl on their skin because someone said it might help. You don't have to thank them, but you should definitely be grateful you weren't born in their century. Now, take a deep breath, sleep easy, because no one is bringing leeches to your bedside. Not tonight. It's time to get to work. You've eaten your crust of bread. You're dressed in damp wool. Your feet are either bare or inside leather bags pretending to be shoes. And now, you step out of the hut into a world of mud, frost, and back-breaking labor that will define every hour of your life until it ends. Because for a medieval peasant, work isn't part of life, it is life. There is no such thing as a day off. There's no weekend, no paid holidays, no lunch breaks, no retirement plan. Just land that needs plowing, crops that need tending, animals that need feeding, and a sun that doesn't wait for you to catch your breath. You begin early, before the sun rises, before your bones are ready. You walk to the fields through ankle-deep mud that smells like last night's chamber pot because it probably is. If it's winter, your hands are frozen before you even touch a tool. If it's summer, you're already sweating before you blink. You bend, you lift, you dig, you carry. Your tools are rudimentary at best. A wooden plow if you're lucky, a bent hoe if you're not, maybe a sickle rusting at the edge. Most of them are shared. Most of them are old. You don't sharpen them. You pray they don't break before the harvest. And if you own an ox, you are rich. Oxen are expensive, hard to feed, and difficult to control, but they can plow where human hands cannot. If you don't have one, you pull the plow yourself. Yes, you. In your patched-up boots and scratchy shirt, digging furrows into rock-hard ground with your own body weight and willpower. You work your own plot of land, maybe an acre or two, if you're fortunate. But that land isn't truly yours. You rent it from the local lord, who also expects you to work his land for free. That's part of the deal. It's called corvée labor, and it means that on top of feeding your family, you must help feed someone else's. You don't get paid, you don't get thanked, you get watched. And if you're too slow, too sick, too old, there are consequences. Sometimes fines, sometimes beatings, sometimes the Lord just takes a bit more of your harvest, or your firewood, or your dignity. It depends on his mood. Now, let's say the harvest is good. The wheat stands tall. The barley glows gold in the sun. You rejoice, right? Well, not yet. First, you give a portion to the Lord. That's rent. Then, a portion to the church. That's tithe. Then, you keep what's left, if anything is left. And if the harvest is bad, if hailstorms flatten your field, or pests eat your grain, or a drought turns your earth to dust. You go hungry. Your children go hungry. The church still wants their tithe. The Lord still wants his share. But your pot is empty. Your cupboard is bare. And there is no safety net, just prayer. Speaking of the church, you are reminded constantly that this life of pain and toil is your divinely ordained fate, that God made peasants and nobles separately, that suffering now will earn you paradise later, that being poor is your cross to bear and questioning it is sin. And most people believe that, because questioning gets you nowhere, and submission, at the very least, brings silence. Now let's step back and look at the bigger picture. The social pyramid of medieval life is simple, sharp, and completely unforgiving. At the bottom, you, the peasant. You make up about 90% of the population. You grow food, dig ditches, build walls, raise animals, and occasionally bury them. Your life is work. Your work is survival. Above you, artisans and craftsmen, blacksmiths, millers, coopers, tailors, still poor, but slightly more mobile. They might own their tools. They might live in town. They might have the luxury of sleeping past sunrise. Above them, merchants and clergy. Merchants travel, clergy preach. Both can read, and that alone sets them apart. They pay fewer taxes, eat better, and answer to fewer people, unless you're a woman. Then you still answer to everyone. And towering above all, nobles and royalty, landowners, lords, barons, kings. They fight wars, host feasts, and collect taxes. They don't farm. They don't toil. They don't even bathe regularly, but they're powerful because they have land. And in the Middle Ages, land is everything. You don't move up the ladder. There's no promotion. No working your way to the top. You're born into your place. You stay there. And if you're lucky, your children might die in the same hut you were born in. That's about as stable as it gets. But back in the field, none of that matters, because it's midday now, and your back is screaming. You stop to stretch, drink a few mouthfuls of warm ale, maybe gnaw on a crust of dry bread. That's lunch. If you're lucky, you get a bit of cheese or a boiled turnip. If you're not, you chew bark. Or just keep going. Because rest is dangerous. The sun doesn't wait. Neither do weeds. Neither do crows. And the last time someone dozed off in the field, the Lord's steward fined him for idleness. He never recovered. So you keep working. You dig. You bind sheaves. You carry bundles. You splash your face with muddy water to stay awake. And all the while, you dream of evening not because it's relaxing, but because at least then you can stop. Sort of. Because when you get home, the chores continue. Wood needs chopping. The fire needs tending. The animals need feeding. You might mend a roof, stitch a tunic, stir the pottage, comfort a crying child, or bury a dying pig. This is after the workday ends. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. You will rise in the dark. You will dress in the cold. You will walk barefoot through the mud, and you will work, because there is no other way to survive. But in all this hardship, there is something remarkable. You endure. You build community. You laugh. You tell stories by the fire. You share what little you have. You carry each other through famine, through frost, through plague. You don't fight for glory. You fight for bread. And that makes you strong in ways no knight will ever understand. So tonight, as you drift off under a soft blanket, maybe after a day of sitting at a desk or scrolling through a screen, remember the men and women who toiled under sun and whip and winter sky so that someone, someday, could rest without fear. You are their future. Rest well. Let's say you've survived another day of labor. Your back hurts, your feet are raw, your breath fogs in the cold air. and your fingers refuse to bend. You retreat into your hut, if you can call it that, a structure more wind-resistant than waterproof, barely holding itself together with twine and faith. Now comes the next challenge, not a wild animal or a plague, but something far more consistent. The seasons. They rule your life. They decide what you eat, when you sleep, if you survive. You don't control them. You don't even understand them. You just endure them. Because they always come back, harder than before. Let's begin with winter, the cruelest season. It arrives early, uninvited. You wake up one morning and your breath floats in the air above you. The pottage has frozen into a solid brick. The straw mattress beneath you is damp and stiff. The fire has gone out. Your blanket isn't a blanket. It's your tunic, layered with whatever fabric scraps weren't being used as diapers or door plugs. You don't get dressed. You were already dressed. You slept in everything you own. You stumble outside, boots crunching on ice if you have boots. If not, it's just cold, raw feet on frostbitten earth. You head to the woods or hedgerows to collect firewood, which is more valuable than food this time of year. You gather branches, fallen limbs, animal dung, anything that burns, anything that smokes less than it warms. Because your survival depends on a fire. No fire, no warmth, no warmth, no life. Inside, smoke clings to every surface. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof. If it's windy, the smoke hangs low and bites your eyes. You cough constantly. The baby wheezes in the corner, but it's better than freezing to death. And everything is freezing. Water in the bucket becomes solid. Bread hardens like stone. Your hands go numb while milking the goat. The door won't open because the earth has frozen around it. Even your breath feels heavy. And yet you work. You don't stop. Animals must be fed. Tools repaired. Wood chopped. Hunger doesn't take a holiday. Neither does death. Winter claims the weak first. Infants, elders, the sick. A fever turns deadly in a cold hut. A cough becomes a death sentence. A cut gets infected, and there's no heat to draw the poison out. You wrap the dead in cloth. Dig a shallow grave if the ground isn't frozen solid, and say goodbye without ceremony. And if it's a bad winter, you run out of food. The turnips are gone. The barley is moldy. The onions rotted in the cellar. You chew bark. You boil weeds. You fast without calling it fasting. You scrape the bottom of the barrel and find only echoes. But the church still expects a tithe. The Lord still expects his rent. Snow doesn't excuse your poverty. It only highlights it. And then, spring. Except spring doesn't start in March. Not for you. Not really. It creeps in slowly, cruelly, like a false promise. One day of sunshine followed by another blizzard. Mud replaces snow. Your hut leaks again. Rats return. You pray for warmth, but spring doesn't care. It teases, it delays, it drags. But eventually, it breaks. The snow melts. The ground thaws. You plant. You hope. And then, just as you get used to not freezing to death, summer comes. At first, it feels like a blessing. Sunlight, warmth, dry air. You stop shivering. You stretch your fingers without pain. The children play outside without crying. But then it keeps going. And going. And suddenly, it's hot. Your hut, once a freezer, becomes an oven. The thatch roof traps heat. The walls sweat. The fire still smolders because you need it to cook. But now it just adds to the misery. You strip off layers but still sweat through what's left. Your skin itches. You stink. Everyone does. Water becomes a problem again, but for a different reason. In winter, it froze. In summer, it disappears. The stream dries up. The well drops low. Buckets return half empty. You boil what you can. You drink weak ale again. You ration. You pray for rain. Rain doesn't come. Or when it does, it floods everything. Crops drown. Roads vanish. You slip in the muck carrying a bundle of hay and dislocate your shoulder. No one's surprised. The seasons do this. They give, then take more. The heat invites pests, fleas, lice, mosquitoes, flies in your stew, your clothes, your eyes. Bed bugs erupt in the straw. Worms crawl into stored grain. Rats scream in the dark like tiny demons. You slap, scratch, and try not to go mad. The animals suffer too. The cows overheat. The chickens stop laying. Your one goat starts limping and collapses from heat stroke. You drag her inside, fan her with a flap of hide, and whisper prayers over her drooling mouth. She lives, barely. But the worst part of summer isn't the sweat, it's the labor. Summer is harvest season. Every hand is needed. You work from dawn to dusk, cutting, binding, hauling. If you fall behind, you starve in winter. If the crops are poor, you starve anyway. Your arms ache from swinging the scythe. Your legs wobble from carrying sacks. Your back screams with every step. But you don't stop. Because the sun doesn't stop. It punishes. It dries your skin into parchment. It cracks your lips. Your eyes sting from dust. Your clothes cling with filth. You sleep in grime and wake up worse. You drink warm ale and hope it doesn't give you worms. You shovel grain into baskets and ignore the blood on your palms. You're not a person anymore. You're part of the field, a tool that sweats and bleeds. Then, finally, autumn, the reward for all this suffering. It brings cool air, softer winds, orange light through thinning trees. You harvest the last of the onions. You patch the roof one more time. You smoke the pork if you have pork. You store what you can. Dry herbs, salt meat, dig root cellars deeper. You give thanks, not because life is easy now, but because it didn't kill you this time. And as the sun fades earlier each day, the wind reminds you, winter is coming again. You're never far from it. Never far from cold fingers, from hunger, from damp straw and frozen toes. The seasons don't rotate, they hunt, and each one gets a shot at you. But somehow, you endure. You plant, you harvest, you survive. You wrap your child in cloth, light a fire, and press your hands together, not for comfort, but for warmth. You don't curse the seasons. You fear them. You respect them. And you keep moving forward, even when the wind tells you not to. So tonight, as you settle under your clean blanket beside a window that closes tight with heat that flows from a quiet furnace breathed deep, you don't have to wake up tomorrow and face the frost with bare hands. You don't have to haul buckets from a dry well. You don't have to break your body under the July sun. All you have to do is sleep. Let's say you're thirsty. You've been working since dawn, bent over fields or hauling bundles or scraping manure from the floor of a hut with more holes than walls. Your throat is dry, your lips cracked, and your body begs for something ending to drink. So what do? You look around. There's a stream nearby. You've seen people dip buckets into it. It glitters in the sunlight. It looks refreshing. You crouch, cup your hands, and bring the water to your lips. Congratulations, you've just played medieval Russian roulette. Because in 1325, water isn't safe, it isn't clean, it isn't filtered, tested, bottled, or blessed. It's dangerous, alive, full of bacteria, waste, and invisible things that could end your week or your life. This stream, the one you're drinking from, isn't some mountain spring. It runs through the village, which means it also runs past the tannery, the butcher shop, the pigsty, the outdoor privies, the bodies of dead animals no one bothered to bury. Everyone dumps their waste into it because where else would it go? You drink it because you have no other choice. But it comes with a price. If you're lucky, the price is a stomachache. If you're not, it's typhoid, cholera, dysentery, or something unnamed that starts with cramps and ends with fevered muttering and a shallow grave outside the churchyard. People don't fully understand why water kills. They don't know about bacteria or viruses. Germ theory hasn't been invented. What they believe is simpler and, somehow, more terrifying. That bad smells mean bad air, and that bad air causes sickness. That if you're ill, the wind was wrong. The mood was wrong. Maybe you're being punished. But deep down, most peasants know, if the water smells bad, don't drink it. So instead, they drink beer. Not the kind you know. No frothy mugs or happy hour lagers. It's called small ale, a weak, cloudy brew with barely enough alcohol to call itself beer. But it's boiled during the brewing process, which kills off the things in water that want to kill you. That makes it precious. So yes, you drink beer with breakfast, with lunch, with dinner. Children drink it. Pregnant women drink it. The old, the sick, the clergy, they all drink beer. Because it won't poison them. At least, not immediately. But beer isn't endless. It takes time to brew. It spoils. It runs out. And when it does, you're back to gambling with water. Some people try to boil it, but firewood is scarce. Boiling water takes time. Buckets are heavy. Life is short. So you roll the dice again and again. Wells exist. They're safer, but not by much. If your village has a well, it's a hole dug deep into the earth, lined with stone, with a bucket and rope attached. But wells can be contaminated too. All it takes is one careless neighbor pouring chamber pot contents too close, or a dead dog falling in. You don't see the contamination. You only see the funerals. Rainwater is another option, collected in barrels from the roof, except the roofs are made of thatch, and thatch is full of pigeon droppings, rotting moss, and mold. You catch the rain, but it comes with a flavor and texture. You could try bathing in the same stream you drink from. In theory, this is efficient. In practice, it's horrifying. People bathe upstream, others dump waste downstream, or vice versa. Either way, you're soaking in a soup of skin cells, goat hair, and human regret. In cities, water is worse. Streams become open sewers. People throw buckets of waste from windows into the street. Sometimes they shout a warning first, sometimes they don't. Walking through town is a minefield of slippery surprises. And if your shoe has a hole in it, which it does, you'll find out fast. Still, you need water for everything. Cooking, washing, cleaning wounds, feeding animals. So you carry it every single day. Buckets sloshing, arms burning, feet sinking in the mud. Over and over, just enough to fill the pot. Just enough to live. And no matter how clean you think you are, something is always growing. On your skin, in your cup, in the corner of your water barrel. Slime, rot, mold. Your senses go dull. You stop noticing. You just drink and hope. Sometimes you mix water with herbs. Boil it with garlic or rosemary, not for flavor, for protection. Maybe the plants can chase the evil out. Maybe they can mask the smell. Maybe they'll do something. Anything. And when someone gets sick, someone always gets sick, you wonder, was it the water, the bad air, the sins they confessed too late? You don't know. You just know to dig the grave far from the well. Sometimes you hear about springs in the forest, hidden pools, sacred places where the water runs clean. People walk for miles to reach them. They bathe, drink, whisper prayers. And then they return home, full of hope and a little less dirt. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes they get worse. Sometimes they never return. In wealthier homes, if you're a noble or a merchant, you might store water in cisterns or even import it from further upstream. You might filter it through cloth, or flavor it with wine, or boil it in a copper pot. But even they suffer. Disease doesn't care about titles. Dysentery doesn't bow to nobility. So no matter your status, you live in constant negotiation with the most basic element of life. It keeps you alive. It might kill you. You need it. You fear it. And every time you bring it to your lips, you pause. Just for a second. Just in case. Tonight, when you walk into your kitchen and turn a handle, and clean, drinkable water pours into your glass paws, let the sound of it fill the silence. Let the cold touch of it remind you, this is a modern miracle. Water that doesn't sting your belly, that doesn't carry death, that isn't flavored by moss, mold, or someone's discarded turnip stew. Just water. Safe, simple, and utterly unimaginable to the people who came before you. Drink deep. You've never had to gamble like they did. Let's talk about food. You've survived the cold, the dirt, the labor, the sickness, and now your stomach growls. It's loud, it's insistent. But this is 1,325, and being hungry doesn't mean you'll get fed. It just means you're alive. Because food actual, edible, not rotten foodies, a luxury in the medieval world, not a guarantee. First of all, you don't eat 3 meals a day. You're lucky if you get 1, maybe 2. Meal times are flexible, determined more by chores than clocks. Breakfast is usually leftovers. Dinner is something boiled. Supper is whatever's left, if anything is. The cornerstone of your diet is bread, but not soft, warm bakery bread. You eat coarse, dark loaves made from rye or barley. Wheat is for the rich. Your bread is dense, heavy, packed with bran, grit, and sometimes ground up beans or tree bark to make it stretch. And yes, sometimes it's moldy, sometimes it's infested with bugs, sometimes it's stale enough to be used as a hammer. But you eat it, you soak it in broth, you chew it slowly. You survive. But not all bread is created equal. Sometimes your rye gets infected with a fungus called ergot. It looks harmless. It isn't. It causes seizures, hallucinations, and death. People used to think the afflicted were possessed or cursed. No one blamed the bread, but the bread was killing them. Alongside bread, there's pottage, a thick soup of whatever's available. Barley, beans, onions, leeks, herbs, maybe a turnip. If you're lucky, there's a bone in it. If you're really lucky, there's a scrap of meat. But usually, it's just grains and water, simmered endlessly, reheated daily, eaten until it ferments. Some families keep a pot going for weeks. Add a little, take a little. No one really remembers what went in originally. It doesn't matter. It's warm. It fills the belly. And if it tastes off, you eat it anyway. Meat is rare, very rare. Peasants don't raise animals for meat. They raise them for milk, eggs, wool, or labor. Killing a pig or a chicken is a last resort. When it happens, the whole village knows. The meat is salted, smoked, dried, or boiled into oblivion. Nothing is wasted, not the bones, not the organs, not even the blood. Holidays and feast days might bring roasted meat to the table, but that's not your everyday life. Most days, you dream of meat while chewing cabbage and pretending it's a goose. Preservation is everything. You don't have refrigeration. You don't even have a cool cellar. So food is dried, salted, pickled, or smoked. Fish are strung up and dried until they look like driftwood. Beans are stored in sacks, hung from the ceiling away from rats. Cabbage is buried in brine. Apples are sliced thin and left in the sun. But even preserved food can go bad, and you often eat it anyway. Spoilage is judged by smell and hope. Mold is scraped off. Worms are picked out. If it doesn't move too fast, it's dinner. And then there's Milka ticking time bomb. Fresh milk sours within hours. If you don't turn it into cheese or butter immediately, it's wasted. Cheese is common, but crude. It's soft, smelly, and barely aged. It doesn't melt. It doesn't stretch. It just exists. You eat it with bread. You hide it from mice. You cut around the mold if there's too much green. Eggs are a luxury. Chickens lay when they feel like it. Sometimes they hide their nests. Sometimes they stop laying altogether. If you find an egg, you don't ask how old it is. You crack it, sniff it, and pray. Fruit is seasonal. You eat apples in autumn, plums in summer. Berries if the birds don't beat you to them. You dry what you can, but most of it spoils. There's no sugar to preserve it. Just time and guesswork. Vegetables are hardy. Cabbage, turnips, onions, leeks, carrots, not the sweet, colorful ones you know. These are pale, knobby, and bitter. But they grow in poor soil and store well, so you eat a lot of them boiled, mashed, and occasionally raw. Grain is life. Barley, rye, oats. You grind it, bake it, stir it. It fills your belly and your breath. But it attracts rats, and rats bring fleas, and fleas bring plague. So grain is guarded, sometimes desperately. But even with all this, food is never certain. Because at any moment, your crop might fail. Rain might drown your field. Hail might smash your vegetables. Wind might strip your orchard. A bad year means famine, not hunger. Famine. You stretch what little you have. You eat less. You feed the children first. You boil weeds. You eat leather. You trap rats and roast them. You dig up roots you can't name and pray they aren't poisonous. And when the food runs out, people start disappearing. Not from violence, from quiet starvation. They stop talking. They lie down more. They grow thin. Then they're gone. Their names spoken only in whispers. Their bowls passed to someone else. And the church still takes its tithe. Even in famine, even when your children cry through the night and the pottage is just hot water with color, the priest expects his share, and you give it, because what if God is watching? Then, somehow, the season turns. The field begins to grow again. You harvest just enough. You store just enough. You survive, just barely. And you start the cycle over again. So tonight, when you open the fridge and complain that there's nothing to eat, think of your medieval ancestor chewing boiled barley for the 6th day in a row and hoping it doesn't sprout a tail. When you toss moldy bread in the trash, remember someone once scraped that mold off with a spoon and gave it to their child. And when you skip dinner because you're just not in the mood, think of the mother who sat in a candlelit hut, listening to her child cry because she'd given away the last of her stew. Food wasn't pleasure. Food was survival. And the danger wasn't in what you ate, but in having nothing to eat at all. Before you do anything in medieval life, before you eat, before you work, before you even speak, you pray. Not because you're especially devout, but because everyone is. Because not praying could mean bad luck, bad crops, or worse, eternal damnation. Religion isn't just part of life in the Middle Ages, is life. It's the sky over your head, the dirt under your feet, and the silence between your breaths. You wake up and say a prayer. You eat and say a prayer. You hear thunder and say a prayer. Your neighbor sneezes, you cross yourself and mutter another prayer. Every action has a divine consequence. Every misstep, every unkind word, every impure thought is a cosmic liability. The church is everywhere, physically and spiritually. The village church is the only stone building in sight. It's where you're baptized, married, and buried. It's where you confess your sins and hope someone holier than you tells God you're trying. You don't read the Bible. No one does. It's written in Latin, hand-copied, pricier than your house. You learn through sermons, stained glass, and fear. Fear of sin. Fear of hell. Fear of eternal fire. It's not subtle. You've seen the paintings. You've heard the warnings. There are demons with pitchforks and boiling pits and screaming souls pulled apart by wolves. Hell isn't a metaphor. It's a daily threat. And heaven? That's harder to picture. It's less fire, more clouds, less screaming, more singing. But you don't focus on heaven. You're too busy trying to avoid hell. The priest isn't just a spiritual leader. He's a judge, teacher, accountant, and sometimes executioner. He tells you how to live, what to eat, who to marry, when to fast, when to mourn. And you obey, because he speaks for God. And God always seems angry. You give the church a tithe 10% of everything. 10% of your grain, your eggs, your income if you even have income. It's not optional. If you can't pay in goods, you pay in labor. If you can't pay in labor, you pray even harder. The church also controls time. The calendar revolves around saints' days, holy days, and feast days. There are so many of them that at times, you're forbidden from working over 100 days a year, though in practice, you probably work anyway, quietly, behind the hedgerow. There are fasting periods too, Lent, Advent, Fridays, holy days. That means no meat, no dairy, no eggs. For you, a peasant, it doesn't change much. You weren't eating meat anyway. You just call it fasting and carry on. But the religious rituals do offer comfort, structure, a way to make sense of the suffering. If your child dies, it's God's will. If your crops fail, it's punishment. If your house burns down, it's a trial of faith. There's always a reason, even if you'll never understand it. You confess your sins regularly, to the priest, to God, to yourself. Lust, envy, theft, blasphemy. Some things you've done, some things you just thought about. It doesn't matter. Sin is in the mind as much as the body. The punishment, penance, maybe prayer, maybe fasting, maybe walking barefoot to a shrine in the next village, maybe giving up something you never had. You obey, because forgiveness is everything. And forgiveness is rarely free. For women, religion is both a shield and a shackle. The Virgin Mary is exalted. Eve is blamed. You're told to be obedient, pure, modest, to keep quiet, to suffer well. You are closer to temptation, but also closer to redemption, if you follow the rules. And if you don't, you're not just a sinner. You're a witch. Midwives, healers, herbalist women who know too much, help too many, or speak too freely are accused of consorting with demons, of cursing crops, of stealing children in the night. Sometimes all it takes is a bad harvest and a jealous neighbor. You're bound, drowned, burned, not for what you've done, but for who you are. Because fear keeps people in line. The church is generous with blessings, but generous with curses too. If you break the rules, speak against doctrine, question anything, you could be labeled a heretic, and heretics are dangerous. Because they think for themselves. And in a world this fragile, that's the greatest threat of all. But faith also unites. On feast days, the whole village gathers. You light candles. You sing hymns. You watch mystery plays reenactments of Bible stories, performed by people who can't read but know every line by heart. And when there's a crisis of famine, a plague, a war, you turn to God. You pray harder, walk further. You whisper to saints whose names you can barely pronounce. You hang talismans on your doorway. You kiss relics, you donate your last egg, anything. Anything for mercy. Because in the end, you don't want riches, you don't want power, you want peace, rest. A place where your back doesn't ache and your child doesn't cough and the sky doesn't look like it wants to kill you. You want heaven, and you'll do whatever it takes to get there. So tonight, as you rest in your warm room with your electric lights and closed windows, take a moment to remember the people who prayed for this kind of peace while huddled in a damp chapel under a leaking roof, repeating words in a language they didn't understand. They believed, fiercely, because sometimes belief was all they had, and it carried them through fire, frost, famine, and fear. Let it carry you gently to sleep. She wakes before the rooster, not because she wants to, but because someone has to. There's no alarm, no snooze button, just the cry of a hungry child, the groan of a wind-shaken wall, the ache of bones that have worked too long and slept too little. She sits up in the dark, still wearing yesterday's clothes, because that's all she has. She pulls her shawl tighter, pushes open the crooked wooden door, and steps into the cold, her feet bare on the dirt floor. She doesn't complain. She doesn't get to. Because in 1325, being a woman means being everything: mother, laborer, cook, caretaker, mender, midwife, milker, healer, and sometimes even farmer, but never just one of those things at a time. She starts with fire. If it's gone out overnight, she rebuilds it from ash, blowing gently, coaxing warmth back into the room. Then comes the water carried in buckets from the stream. Then food, if there is any. Bread to slice, pottage to stir. Something warm to put in her children's stomachs before they start the day with her in the fields. Because Yeshi works the fields too. When the animals need feeding, she's there. When seeds need planting, she's there. When hay needs hauling or grain needs threshing, she's there, swinging a flail beside her husband if he's still alive. She does it all while watching the toddler, shushing the baby, and worrying whether the oldest is coming down with something worse than a fever. And when the harvest ends, her work doesn't. She spins wool into thread. She weaves. She mends clothes by candlelight. She grinds grain into flour, kneeling beside the stone quern, pushing, turning, repeating until her shoulders scream. She carries wood, scrubs walls, picks herbs, milks the goat, plucks chickens, tends wounds. And still, no one calls her powerful, because power in the Middle Ages wears a crown, not a linen cap. She married young, maybe at 14, maybe younger. She didn't choose her husband, her father did. The union was a transaction. A dowry changed hands, maybe land, maybe livestock, maybe a single good shirt, and that was that. She was a wife now. Love, that's a luxury. Her job is to bear children, many children, too many. Some live, some don't. She mourns them all, but quietly. There's no time to grieve when you're needed in the field the next morning. Childbirth is the greatest risk she'll ever face. It happens at home with midwives and herbs, and sometimes just with her mother whispering prayers and holding her hand. There's no doctor, no antiseptic, no clean sheets. If the baby comes wrong, or gets stuck, or the bleeding won't stop, there's nothing anyone can do. Some women live, some don't. Everyone prays. If she survives, she's up the next day, cooking with one arm while the baby nurses at her chest. If the baby dies, she still gets up, because the fire's gone out again, and the goats are bleeding, and her other children are still hungry. And no one stops to say how strong she is. Because this is just life. She rarely rests. She rarely owns anything. Even her name might not be hers anymore. She's wife of, mother of, daughter of, In the records, if she's mentioned at all, she's a shadow behind a man's name. But don't be fooled. She sees everything. She knows which herbs ease fever, which neighbors are kind, which pigs are ready for slaughter. She can carry water and a toddler at the same time while reciting prayers and planning dinner. She has no formal education, but she knows how to stretch a handful of beans into 2 days of meals, how to treat a burn, how to sew a dress from rags, and how to patch a roof before the rain comes. She's quiet, but she's not weak. She knows loss, knows fear, knows what it means to give everything and still feel like it's not enough, but she carries on. She kneels in church and prays not just for salvation, but for good weather, for the fever to break, for the next baby to live, for the wolves to stay out of the sheep pen. And every now and then, on feast days or weddings, she dances, laughs, lets her hair down, forgets, for a brief moment, that she lives in a world built to keep her small. And when her husband dies or disappears in Warsh, runs the household herself. She becomes head of the family, makes decisions, fights for what's left, defends her children, endures gossip, endures pity, endures hunger, and keeps going. Sometimes she never marries again. Sometimes she does. Sometimes she joins a convent not for peace, but for a place to exist on her own terms. But wherever she is, the village depends on her. She is the one who passes down the stories, the songs, the herbal remedies. She's the one who teaches the next generation how to cook, how to keep a fire going, how to live with grace in a world with no mercy. And when she dies, there's no statue, no inscription, maybe just a wooden cross, maybe not even that. But her hands shaped every roof, every hearth, every field. And her silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. So tonight, as you pull a soft blanket over yourself and drift into sleep, remember her not the queen in a tower, but the woman kneeling by a fire, stirring soup for 6 children and praying it stretches one more day. She never asked for praise, but she deserves to be remembered. Let's say someone steals your chicken. It's not just a nuisance. It's not just dinner gone. It's survival. That bird laid eggs. That bird was a future meal. That bird was valuable. And in 1325, theft is serious business. You march to the village center and lodge your complaint. There's no police force, no detectives, no fingerprints, no court date. The manorial court handles everything. It's run by your lordor, more likely, his steward. He knows the law. Sort of. Mostly he knows who owes him what and who's been causing trouble. If you're lucky, he listens. If you're not, he's drunk. Either way, justice is coming. But justice in the medieval world isn't about fairness. It's about control. Theft, slander, adultery, drunkenness, heresy, all are punishable. But how they're punished, that depends on your status, your gender, your mood, whether anyone important likes you. For small crimes, you might get a fine, or a public flogging, or time in the stocks, your hands and head locked in wooden boards in the center of town while people throw things at you. Rotten fruit if they're generous, rocks if they're not. Everyone watches. That's the point. Justice isn't private, it's a spectacle. You might also be branded a hot iron pressed to your flesh, marking you forever. A thief's mark, a liar's mark. It never fades. You carry it like a badge or a warning. Sometimes, justice gets creative. If you gossip too much, they might put you in a scold's bridally metal cage for your head, with a plate that presses down your tongue. You can't speak. You can barely breathe. People laugh. That's part of the punishment. If you're accused of witchcraft, you might be bound and thrown into water. If you float, you're guilty because the water rejects your evil. If you sink, you're innocent. But you're also drowning. That's called trial by ordeal. You might be told to walk across hot irons, or carry a red-hot bar, or reach into boiling water to retrieve a stone. If your wounds heal cleanly, God says you're innocent. If they don't, well, you probably weren't meant to survive anyway. The logic is brutal, but to them, it's divine. For serious crimes, there's execution. Hanging is most common. You're marched to the edge of town, a rope looped around your neck. The crowd gathers. Children climb trees for a better view. Vendors sell snacks. It's horrifying. It's also entertainment. If you're noble, you might get a cleaner death. Beheading, one swift cut, or maybe two. Unless the executioner is nervous, then 3 or 4. It happens. Sometimes, you're hanged in a Jabata metal cage where your body rots on display. A warning, a message, a promise. If you're accused of heresy, the church takes over. They're not interested in your truth. They want confession, repentance, compliance. You're questioned, pressured, tortured. Thumbscrews, stretching racks, the rack. The strapado where your arms are tied behind your back and you're dropped from a height. Your shoulders dislocate, you scream. They call it purification. Eventually, you say what they want. Then you're burned, tied to a stake, surrounded by dry wood. Flames rise. People watch. They cheer. They pray. They say it's for your soul. You just burn. And the law isn't always about crime. It's about keeping order. Peasants are expected to stay in line, to obey the Lord, to serve without question. If they resist, violence follows. A rebellion can start with something small, a tax too high, a harvest too poor, a priest too cruel, a steward too greedy. It spreads, torches, pitchforks, shouts, and then someone dies. The Lord retaliates. Villages are burned. Heads are displayed on pikes. Bodies hang at crossroads. The message is clear: obey or be erased. And there's no escaping violence in daily life either. Domestic abuse is common and rarely punished. A husband can beat his wife, and no one blinks. Parents beat children. Neighbors fight over land. Drunken brawls erupt at feasts. And revenge, that's a whole system on its own. Feuds last for generations. One insult turns into a knife. One stolen sheep becomes a burned barn. Entire families go to war with each other while the rest of the village ducks for cover. There's no therapy, no restraining orders. No, let's talk it out. There's only blood or silence. Bandits roam the roads. Soldiers steal from villagers. Violence isn't an accident. It's a language, one everyone understands. And yet, amidst all this, people find ways to survive. They avoid the courts. They settle things with handshakes, or bribes, or gossip. They walk carefully. They watch what they say. They teach their children to keep their heads down and their hands clean. Not because it's right, but because it's safer. You follow the rules, not because you believe in them, but because you fear them. So tonight, when you lock your door and sleep without fear of mobs, gallows, or flaming stakes, remember those who lived under a justice system designed not to protect them, but to keep them quiet. They didn't ask for fairness. They asked to make it through another day. And somehow they did. In the medieval world, death is always close. You don't grow up with it, you grow through it. You see it, smell it, carry it, you bury it, and then you keep going. Because there's no time for despair when survival demands your hands, your feet, your full attention. The truth is, most people don't live long. If you make it to 30, you're lucky. 40, remarkable. 50, practically ancient. People die in their teens, in their 20s, in childbirth, in winter, in the field, at night. in silence, in screams. Childhood is especially fragile. Nearly half of all children die before the age of 5. A fever, a cough, a cut that goes bad, a milk tooth that swells into infection. Mothers don't name their babies right away because they might not stay. And yet they love them, fiercely, because when you know death so well, you cherish life more deeply. Pregnancy is one of the most dangerous things a woman can experience. With no sanitation, no trained doctors, no pain relief, every birth is a gamble. A child might come too early or too late, or breech, or stuck. A mother might bleed out in the straw, whispering prayers, or she might survive, only to lose the child days later. There are no hospitals, only midwives, candles, herbs, and faith. When sickness strikes, it comes fast. It might be a fever that boils the blood, a cough that deepens into something wet and rattling, a wound that turns black and oozes, a rash that spreads like fire. There are no antibiotics, no sterile bandages, no second chances. And then, of course, there's plague. The Black Death arrives like a shadow and stays like a curse. It kills within days. Swollen lymph nodes, bleeding sores, blackened limbs, delirium, collapse. Whole families vanish in a week. Whole villages disappear. Graves are dug day and night, then filled and forgotten. The church runs out of prayers. The grave diggers run out of strength. But even without plague, death is constant. There's no embalming, no morticians, no funeral homes. You die at home, often in the same bed where you were born, wrapped in the same linens you were married in. When death comes, the village responds quickly. A bell is rung. A priest is summoned. If you're lucky, you get last retesa final blessing to cleanse your soul before you slip away. If the priest arrives too late, people whisper. They worry. Because dying without absolution means your soul might wander. The body is washed, dressed, sometimes in plain cloth, sometimes in Sunday best. Often, it's all the same thing. There's no coffin, maybe a simple box. Maybe just a shroud, tied at the feet. The grave is shallow, the service short. You're buried in the churchyard if there's room. If not, they bury you somewhere nearby and reuse the grave later. Bones are moved, skulls collected, ossuaries filled. Death takes up too much space. The living always need it back. Tombstones are rare. Only the rich can afford them. Most people are marked by memory alone. A tree, a bend in the path, a story passed down. That's where your grandfather lies, someone might say. But eventually, even the stories fade. Still, death isn't entirely grim. It's part of life. People speak of it often, plan for it, accept it. They don't avoid the topic. They build shrines, light candles, paint walls with skeletons dancing hand in hand with bishops, kings, and peasants alike. Because death doesn't care who you are. It takes the farmer and the knight, the child and the priest, the poor and the powerful. Everyone dances the same final dance. That truth terrifies some and comforts others. There's also hope. The church teaches that if you live well, if you confess, repent, tithe, and obey, you'll reach heaven, a place without hunger, without pain, without cold, a place with singing, light, and endless rest. But first, most souls pass through purgatory, a kind of spiritual waiting room, full of fire and penance. You burn off your sins. You're purified. Your loved ones can help by praying for you, lighting candles, paying priests to say masses in your name. The poor rarely have that luxury. And hell? Hell is a very real fear, with very real descriptions. It's not vague, it's vivid. You've seen it in paintings and sermons: boiling oil, gnashing teeth, demons with hooks. One wrong step, one unconfessed sin, and that's your forever. So you try to live carefully and die peacefully. When someone passes, the community comes together. Meals are shared, stories are told. There's laughter and tears. Children ask questions. The old nod solemnly. The fire crackles. Life goes on, because it has to. Grief is quiet. It's heavy. But there's no time for long mourning. The animals need feeding. The crops don't wait. The roof still leaks. You carry sorrow like you carry everything else in silence and with calloused hands. And when your time comes, you hope you'll be remembered. Even if your name isn't carved in stone. Even if your grave gets used again. Even if the only thing left of you is the way your granddaughter braids her hair or the way someone stirs the soup a certain way. That's immortality too. So tonight, as you lie in your warm bed, safe and full, and far from plague and frost and shallow graves, remember them. The ones who came before, who lived without comfort but with courage, who died without warning but with dignity. They didn't fear death the way we do. They just accepted it. And maybe, in some strange way, that's the deepest kind of peace. You've made it. You've tilled the frozen fields, endured the itchy wool, chewed the bitter bread. You've survived the leeches, the plagues, the smoke-filled huts, and the bone-deep weariness of a life that never pauses. Somehow, you've lived an entire medieval lifetime all in one long, quiet night. And now, it's time to rest. Not like they did curled on straw beside a dying fire, but truly rest. Because unlike them, you don't need to wake up before dawn and haul water from a freezing stream. You don't have to watch a child cough through the night, praying it's not something fatal. You don't have to ration your food or thank the sky when the bread doesn't kill you. You are warm, you are safe, you are lucky. But before you drift off completely, take a breath and think for a moment not about kings or castles or epic battles, but about the people who didn't make it into the history books. The ones who carried this world on their backs while no one looked. The peasant who lost a toe to frostbite and kept working. The woman who bore 10 children and buried 5. The child who woke up hungry and went to sleep hungrier. They weren't warriors or saints or scholars, but they were strong. Not in the way we usually celebrate, but in the way that matters more. In silence, in suffering, in surviving. We often imagine medieval life as romantic, simple, and noble and free from modern problems. But now you know the truth. It wasn't romantic. It was relentless. Every day was a fight against cold, hunger, disease, and power. Every moment was a gamble. Every act of living was an act of courage. And yet, despite it all, they found joy. In the laughter of children chasing geese through the mud, in the warmth of a stolen loaf of fresh bread, in the music played on homemade flutes, in a dance on the village green or a candle glowing against the winter dark. They didn't have much, but what they had, they shared. They didn't live long, but while they did, they lived fully. Their lives weren't clean or quiet or comfortable, but they were real and raw and deeply human. And now, because of them, you're here. You're sleeping in a bed they couldn't dream of, under a roof they never imagined, with a future they never got to see. You carry their blood, their strength, their memory. That's why this story matters. Not just because it's history, but because it's yours. So as the fire inside your imagination fades and the echoes of that cold medieval wind quiet down, let yourself rest. Let the fields go silent. Let the plow fall still. Let the smoke clear, the lice retreat, the church bells fade. Let the people return to the earth and sleep. And you? You sleep too. Because today, you've lived 1,000 lives. And tonight, you get to dream.